Welcome to Beyond the Backroads.
Welcome back to Beyond the Backroads, Episode 5, The Red Road Woman Crybaby Bridge of Oklahoma. There are roads that feel different after dark. Not dangerous exactly, not obviously threatening, just different. The kind of roads where the atmosphere changes the farther you drive, where the lights from town disappear behind you faster than you expected, where the trees start closing in tighter around the road, where your headlights suddenly feel too small for the amount of darkness surrounding them.
And Oklahoma has a lot of roads like that. Long rural stretches with almost no traffic, no streetlights, no houses for miles, just fences, fields, trees, and silence.
During the day, those roads feel normal, quiet, peaceful even. You pass old barns collapsing into the earth, abandoned gas stations, rusted mailboxes leaning toward the ditch, the kind of scenery you barely notice when the sun is out.
But at night, everything changes. The same roads start feeling isolated in ways that's hard to explain unless you've driven them yourself. Every shadow feels deeper, every turn feels further from civilization, and every bridge suddenly feels important.
Especially old bridges, because bridges already carry a strange feeling by themselves. They separate one place from another, one side from the next. They feel transitional, like crossing points between two different spaces.
And in folklore, bridges show up constantly. Places where people disappeared, places where tragedies happened, places where stories settled in and never left.
Deep in Oklahoma, there are bridges locals still avoid late at night. Not because they're unsafe structurally, not because they're blocked off, but because of what people say still waits there.
They call them crybaby bridges, and Oklahoma has several. Catoosa, Kiefer, Kellyville, Creek County, Old Road outside Tulsa, even bridges whose original structures don't exist anymore, still carrying the stories attached to them.
And despite all the different locations, the stories always circle back to the same things. A woman, a child, a terrible night, and something that never stopped searching afterward.
Locals say if you stop your car on some of these bridges after midnight and turn the engine off, you'll hear it. At first faint enough to question, then clear enough to make you uncomfortable.
And according to the stories, that's only the beginning.
Crybaby Bridge legends exist all over America. Almost every state seems to have one. Texas, Indiana, Ohio, Maryland, Kentucky, Kansas, Georgia, Pennsylvania, different roads, different bridges, different details, but the same emotional core.
That's what makes these stories interesting. They survive because they evolve. Every town reshapes the legend into something local, something personal, something believable enough to pass down.
Some stories say the child drowned accidentally. Others say the mother intentionally threw the child into the water. Some versions involve abusive husbands. Others involve unmarried mothers abandoned by society.
And those details usually reflect the fears of the time period the story traveled through. Isolation, poverty, domestic violence, shame, loss.
Folklore experts have pointed out that crybaby bridge stories often appear in rural places where isolation already affects how people experience the environment.
And Oklahoma's landscape amplifies that feeling naturally, especially at night. Because the farther you get from the cities, the quieter everything becomes.
You notice sounds differently. Wind across fields, water beneath bridges, branches scraping against themselves, Things that wouldn't stand out during the day suddenly feel amplified at night.
And once a place gains a reputation, people start arriving already expecting something to happen, which changes how they experience every little detail around them.
But what makes Oklahoma's version different is how many people tell nearly identical stories about realizing other towns tell them too. Wet footprints, a woman standing near the road, a crying baby beneath the bridge, a figure appearing in the back seat after leaving.
And the consistency of those details is what keeps the stories alive generation after generation. One Oklahoma legend stands out more than the others, the story of the Red Road woman. And depending on who tells it, she was either a victim or someone destroyed by one terrible decision.
Most versions place her on an old red dirt road outside town late at night, long before paved highways reached the area, back when heavy Oklahoma rain turned roads into deep red mud that clung to the wagon wheels and boots.
Some stories say she was fleeing an abusive husband. Others say men had been chasing her after she left a nearby town. A few versions claim she had nowhere left to go at all, just a baby in her arms and darkness ahead of her.
But every version leads her toward the bridge. Always the bridge.
One story says she tried hiding beneath it during a storm, holding the baby tightly against her chest while thunder shook the trees overhead, trying to keep the child quiet so whoever followed her wouldn't hear.
Another version says she attempted to cross the bridge during the heavy rain. The wood slicked beneath her feet, the creek swollen beneath her, and somewhere in the darkness, she slipped.
The baby fell first, into the water below, and the current carried it away before she could reach it.
But the darkest version is the one people tell quietly, the one involving panic, desperation, and a decision made in fear.
According to that version, the baby wouldn't stop crying, and the closer danger got, the more desperate she became, until finally she silenced the child herself.
And almost immediately regretted it, because according to the legend, she never stopped searching afterward.
Locals say that's why she appears soaking wet near the bridge, why she reaches toward passing cars, why people describe her looking confused instead of angry.
Like she's still trapped in that moment, still trying to undo something impossible to undo. Long before paranormal investigators started visiting the bridges with cameras and recording equipment, people living near them already had stories. Not polished stories, not internet stories, just local warnings passed between people who knew the roads.
Farmers driving home after dark, truck drivers hauling cattle late at night, teenagers parking near the bridge because someone dared them to, families who lived nearby and avoided the area after sunset without really explaining why.
And most of these stories started the same way, with someone hearing something they couldn't explain.
At first, people usually thought it was an animal, a cat, a fox, something caught near the creek, because the human brain wants an explanation before it accepts something stranger.
But according to the stories, the sound didn't behave normally. It moved, changed distance, sometimes sounded beneath the bridge, then suddenly beside the road.
One old local account describes a farmer driving home after checking fencing during a storm. As he crossed the bridge, he noticed a woman standing near the ditch line, holding something against her chest. At first, he thought she needed help.
He stopped the truck, rolled down the window, asked if she was all right. And before she answered, he heard a baby crying somewhere behind her.
He looked away briefly to grab a flashlight from the seat, and when he looked back, the woman was gone.
Another story came from teenagers in the 1970s who drove out to one of the bridges after hearing rumors from older students. According to the story, they parked near the center of the bridge and turned the headlights off. At first, nothing happened. Then they started hearing splashing beneath them.
Not loud splashing, slow movement, like someone wading through shallow water directly below the bridge.
One of them leaned over the railing with a flashlight, and for a second, claimed he saw someone standing waist deep in the creek, staring back at him.
The group left immediately, and according to the story, one of the girls in the back seat refused to speak the entire drive home because she claimed she heard crying inside the car after they pulled away. People who intentionally visit crybaby bridges usually expect something dramatic, a ghost appearing, a sudden scream, something obvious. But most stories don't begin that way.
They begin quietly with atmosphere, the kind of atmosphere that slowly changes the longer you stay there.
People describe stepping out of their car and immediately noticing how different the silence feels. Not empty silence, pressured silence, like the environment itself is listening.
Then the crying starts, usually faint at first, soft enough that people question whether they're actually hearing it.
Some say it sounds far away, like it's coming from deep beneath the bridge. Others say it echoes from the trees, and some claim it moves around them entirely.
That's what's unsettling people most. Not just hearing it, but realizing they can't locate where it's coming from.
One local story describes a group standing near the bridge railing when the crying suddenly stopped, only to be replaced by the sound of splashing directly underneath them. They shined flashlights into the water and saw nothing, but the splashing continued for several seconds afterward.
Others report hearing what sounded like a woman crying softly beneath the bridge after the baby's cries stopped. Not loud, not screaming, just quiet sobbing mixed with the sound of water moving below.
And many people say the atmosphere changes the longer they remain there. The temperature feels colder, the air feels heavier. Conversations get quieter without anyone meaning them to.
One of the oldest recurring details of Oklahoma Crybaby Bridge stories is the footprints. Wet footprints appear around parked vehicles.
Usually after people hear the crying, or after someone claims they saw the woman near the road.
The stories vary slightly depending on location, but the details remain strangely consistent. Small puddles appearing beside the car, one at a time, like someone invisible was walking around it.
Some stories describe footprints beginning near the bridge railing and slowly moving toward the vehicle. Others say they appear directly beside the driver's door, as though someone walked up silently while nobody was looking.
One local legend tells of two men parked near the bridge during a thunderstorm. After hearing crying beneath the bridge, they stayed inside the truck, arguing about whether someone was actually down there. Then one of them noticed water dripping down the passenger side window.
At first, he thought it was rain, until he realized the rain had already stopped, and the water was moving upward, like fingers dragging across the glass.
When they turned on the interior light, they found muddy, wet footprints surrounding the truck, but none leading away from it.
Another story describes a teenager returning home after visiting one of the bridges and discovering muddy, child-sized footprints in the back floorboard of the car, even though no one had entered the vehicle. But the story that survives more than any other is the backseat story, because according to local folklore, leaving the bridge doesn't always mean leaving the experience behind.
Drivers describe hearing crying after they've already driven away. At first, they assume it's outside, echoing through the trees behind them.
But the farther they get from the bridge, the clearer it becomes. And eventually they realize something terrifying. The crying isn't outside anymore.
It's coming from the back seat.
One version of the story describes a woman driving home alone after visiting the bridge with friends. She dropped everyone else off first and started driving home by herself. That's when she heard it. A baby crying directly behind her.
She looked in the rearview mirror and claimed she saw a figure sitting in the center seat. Not clearly, just a dark shape with wet hair hanging forward.
When she turned around fully, the seat was empty, but soaked.
Other stories say drivers see a woman reflected in the rearview mirror even though no one is physically in the car. Always silent, always staring downward, never blinking.
And according to some versions, if you acknowledge her directly, the crying stops instantly.
One Oklahoma legend often connected to Crybaby Bridge stories is Dead Woman's Crossing near Weatherford, Oklahoma. Unlike most folklore, this one has documented history attached to it.
In 1905, a woman named Katie DeWitt James disappeared while traveling with her infant daughter, Lulu Bell. Weeks later, her body was discovered near Deer Creek, decapitated. Her murder was never solved.
The location eventually became known as Dead Woman's Crossing. And over time, ghost stories attached themselves to this tragedy.
Locals began reporting sightings of a woman near the bridge at night, some hearing crying, others hearing footsteps near the creek.
Paranormal investigators who visited the area claimed to experience sudden cold spots and unexplained audio recordings near the water.
And because the case involved a missing mother and child, people naturally connected the legend to Oklahoma's Crybaby Bridge stories.
Legends like these survive because they attach themselves to universal fears: loss, regret, isolation.
And bridges already feel symbolic. Crossings, transitions, places between one thing and another.
Folklore experts believe these stories continue evolving because every generation reshapes them around its own fears and experiences.
But some parts never change. The crying, the woman, the road, that feeling that something unfinished still lingers there. Today, paranormal investigators still visit Oklahoma Crybaby Bridges regularly, trying to capture evidence, audio, video, anything explainable.
Some claim they've recorded faint crying on EVP devices. Others describe hearing voices they couldn't hear in the real time during playback.
Even skeptics admit the environment itself affects people psychologically. Darkness, isolation, expectations, all of it changes how the brain processes sound and movement.
But according to investigators, that still doesn't explain why so many unrelated people report nearly identical experiences. No matter how many versions of the stories exist, people always come back to the same image: a woman standing near the road, soaked, silent, arms slightly outstretched.
Like she's searching for help or searching for something she lost.
And according to the stories, she's still walking those roads, still appearing near bridges after storms, still listening for crying beneath the water.
Maybe every Crybaby Bridge story is just folklore. Stories passed down because they scare people. Stories that evolved over generations until nobody remembers where they started.
Or maybe places absorb things, moments, fears, grief, loss.
And maybe some moments are strong enough to leave something behind.
Because if enough people describe the same sounds, the same figure, the same feeling, eventually the stories stop sounding random. There's another detail that comes up a lot in Oklahoma road legends. Not just crybaby bridges. Roads themselves become avoided. Not officially, nobody closed them, nobody blocked them off. But over time, locals stop using them after dark unless they absolutely have to.
And sometimes it happens slowly enough that people don't even realize it. A road loses traffic over the years. People start taking the longer route instead. Newer highways get built. More populated areas pull people away. And eventually certain roads just become quiet.
That kind of isolation changes how a place feels. Especially in Oklahoma, where stretches of road can feel endless at night. You can drive for miles without seeing another car. No porch lights, no gas stations. Nothing except your headlights and whatever's beyond them.
And folklore grows well in places like that because isolation already changes your perception. Every sound feels amplified. Every movement catches your attention. The brain starts trying to explain every unfamiliar thing around you.
But locals insist some roads feel wrong even during the daytime. Like the atmosphere itself shifted long ago and never shifted back.
A lot of Crybaby Bridge stories specifically happen after storms, and that detail shows up constantly across Oklahoma folklore. Heavy rain, flooded creeks, thunderstorms moving through farmland late at night.
Locals say the bridges feel different after rain. The wood swells, the air turns colder, fog settles lower over the water, and the sound of the creek becomes louder than normal.
Some investigators think that's part of why the stories persist psychologically. Storms already make people uneasy. Reduced visibility, changing sound patterns, limited depth perception.
But believers say storms matter for another reason. Because according to the legends, that's when she appears most often.
One local account describes a couple driving home during heavy rain outside Tulsa when they noticed someone standing near the edge of the bridge. At first, they thought it was a hitchhiker, a woman wearing what looked like a long, wet dress, head lowered, hair hanging forward.
The driver slowed down because visibility was terrible. And according to the story, as the headlights hit her fully, she vanished. No movement, no running, just gone.
But moments later, the woman in the passenger seat started hearing crying from somewhere behind them.
One thing almost every Crybaby Bridge witness describes is how unnatural the crying sounds. Not fake, not distorted, just wrong somehow.
Too clear when it's far away, too distant when it should sound close, like the sound doesn't behave normally.
One paranormal investigator described standing beneath one of the bridges during an overnight investigation when he had heard crying directly behind him. He turned immediately. Nothing there. But the sound continued.
And what bothered him most wasn't hearing it. It was the fact that he couldn't tell what direction it was coming from. He described it later as sounding inside the environment instead of inside the air.
Others report hearing splashing beneath the bridge immediately after the crying stops, like someone moving through the shallow water, slowly, deliberately.
And according to some local stories, if you hear splashing after the crying stops, you're supposed to leave immediately, because that means she's getting closer.
Part of the reason Crybaby Bridge stories spread so easily through Oklahoma is because tragedies involving water weren't uncommon historically, especially in rural areas.
Flooding was dangerous. Creeks rose quickly during storms. Roads washed out easily before modern infrastructure existed.
And in isolated communities, accidents sometimes became stories long before they became documented history.
One local historian explained that many Crybaby Bridge legends likely evolved from real tragedies that became distorted over generations. Drownings, missing persons, families disappearing during storms. Stories passed down verbally until details blended together.
Which means some versions of these legends may have started from something real, even if the supernatural element came later.
A lot of people compare the Red Road Woman to the classic woman in white legends found across America. But there's a difference.
Most woman in white stories involve hitchhikers, silent passengers, women trying to get home.
The Red Road Woman feels different because she's not trying to get somewhere. According to the folklore, she's searching.
Searching for the child she lost. Searching for the moment before everything went wrong. Searching for something impossible to undo.
And that changes the emotional tone of the legend. It stops feeling like a ghost story and starts feeling like grief repeating itself endlessly.
One detail that comes up repeatedly in local stories is people refusing to go back after a single experience, even skeptics.
A man interviewed during a local paranormal documentary described visiting a Crybaby Bridge as a teenager expecting nothing to happen. He said he mocked the stories most of the night, laughed about it, made jokes.
Until he heard crying beneath the bridge while standing alone near the railing. Not recorded crying, not distant traffic. Clear crying, close enough that he leaned over, expecting to see someone below.
And according to him, the crying stopped the second he looked down, immediately replaced by the sound of footsteps behind him on the bridge.
He turned around expecting his friends. Nobody was there. But he said the bridge suddenly felt occupied, like he had interrupted something.
He left immediately, and according to the interview, never returned.
Crybaby Bridge stories survived oral storytelling for decades. But the internet amplified them completely.
Now people upload investigations online constantly. TikToks, YouTube videos, podcasts, forums discussing personal experiences.
And even though many videos are clearly exaggerated, some feel genuine because the people filming them sound legitimately uncomfortable.
Not because they captured a ghost visually, but because the environment itself affected them. The darkness, the isolation, the silence.
And that's part of what keeps the legend alive today. Every generation experiences the story differently, but the emotional reaction stays the same.
Some legends survive because they're entertaining. Others survive because they attach themselves to real fears people already carry. Crybaby Bridge stories endure because they combine both. Isolation, loss, dark roads, water, the fear of hearing something you can't explain when nobody else is around.
And whether the stories are paranormal or psychological, the experiences people describe are remarkably similar. The crying, the woman, the footprints, the feeling of something following you after you leave.
Maybe that consistency means nothing. Or maybe repeated stories leave marks on places over time. Maybe belief itself changes how people experience certain environments.
But if enough unrelated people keep describing the same thing generation after generation, eventually the stories stop fading. They become part of the road itself.
And somewhere out there on an empty Oklahoma road after midnight, a woman may still be standing near a bridge, listening for a child she never found.
And if you hear it, you might not want to stop.
We will see you next time.